You could have heard this episode 48 hours early on our Patreon, patreon.com/Indieheads Podcast. By joining us for as low as $1 a month, you'll receive episodes early and gain access to our Discord server. All of our upcoming episodes will be up on our Patreon 48 hours before it hits our public podcast feeds. But if you're hearing this via our Patreon feed, we thank you so much for your support. We especially want to thank our Real Ones patrons, including Buchanan, Rob Marino, GayHorse420, Cal50, Josiah Duncan, Grant McSpooky, Chris Perez, Jenna LaFleur, Darian Fisher, Alex RLD, Alex Gritchmanoff, Melissa Reddick, Tony DeSerafino, Chris Wade, Selectric, Maze Farms, Bex, Georgia Mikowski, Noah Kurtz, Waffle113, Alex Bulovich, Alec Felder, Adam Edwards, Jackson Christ, Elizabeth, John O'Rourke, and Derek Pemberton. To become a real one, consider supporting us with a $5 a month donation, where you'll receive bonus episodes every month and get a shout out at the top of the pod. Anyways though, enjoy the episode.
So what do y'all think about that new Lord album?
You know,
I
think it's pretty good. You know, it's got some, it's got some interesting stuff going on. You know, but I just
look. Yeah, I was a little worried. I was a little worried when she dropped Solar Power, because I was like, this is kind of a mid-lead single to follow up your acclaimed record. But the thing is, I was listening to Solar Power again today when I was driving back home from the grocery store, and I actually started drifting into the other lane in traffic head first into an oncoming SUV, so I had to throw on something else. But it's I mean, I see what she's kind of going for with like the excuse me, sorry. I see what she's going for with the social satire stuff, but a lot of it
enough.
Good God, I fell asleep. Production.
AJ, enough. I fell asleep. We have to move on to something else. We cannot talk about something this boring.
Look, the Lord album for me, from listen one went
no more. Okay.
I have one thought to get out. I have one thought to get out. It went from being really boring from first listen to me to being aggressively upsetting on the second listen, and then I was listening to it. I was making dinner, and I actually started falling asleep. And I burnt down my new house that I just bought a week ago because I was listening to the Lord album, and I fell asleep while I was cooking pasta.
Sounds like your new house is in its Arby's era.
Unfortunately, yes. It's roast like that beef.
I love this one.
Okay, welcome to the Indieheads Podcast. This is just a one-off. We are like deep in our 90s bag right now, and the three hosts of the 90s Rock are not on, so it's just us three.
We needed to give them a break after the Patreon exclusive episode that happened.
And also, we just really had to get into the galaxy brain takes of like talking about Deafheaven for more than 5 minutes.
The Indieheads Podcast is shockingly doing an episode about music that was released in the 21st century.
So, I'm Rose, and with me I have Jackie.
Hello. I'm excited to talk about new music. We got takes. We're back, baby.
And AJ.
Hi. We're talking about my 3 favorite albums of the year so far on this episode.
Ooh. AJ's going to be off the leash, is what that means.
It's true.
So do we want to start with just the first one on the dock? Because
let's get
I feel like this one is going to be like
let's get the easy ones out of the way. Let's do 2 and 3 because I feel like we can blow through those the quickest.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So first up, Sinner Get Ready by Lingua Ignota. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I really, really like this album. I didn't really get like super into Caligula. I tried it out one time and it was a lot, which is the whole Lingua Ignota thing, but I didn't really spend a lot of time with it. But I sat with this record more, and I think it is definitely like slightly more accessible. Accessible feels like the wrong word to use in any discussion of Lingua Ignota, but I think that there's just a little bit more prettiness mixed in with the holy shit, this Catholic lady is really scary. But I love this album. It's grown on me a lot as I've been spending time with it in the last week, and I think that it's just I get why some people are like, oh, this is like doing too much. And I also get our friend Lily, who basically was like, I cannot listen to this because of the trauma that was going to music school. And as someone who took one class in music school, I understand how like hearing this level of theory nerd bullshit can be kind of repellent for people who hate institutionalized music. But I think that she uses her theory nerd powers for good rather than for evil, and unlike Jacob Collier or whoever, like
Cursed.
the nerdery is being used toward actual artistic ideas and actual stuff going on, and there is stuff going on in this record. Oh boy, is there a lot. This lady has some complicated feelings about religion, let me tell you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like musically this has a lot of interesting things too. Like specifically the way she's using like very traditional instruments that came up in, the like countryside of Pennsylvania, like the banjos and stuff like that.
Yeah, and this album is so much more traditional in its instrumentation, but everything that she uses, she figures out a fucked up way to do it. Like there's an organ on here, like there's a lot more traditional like piano and guitars, like you're saying, but like a really good example is like well, is it not Your Hands? What's the song that has hands?
Many Hands?
Many Hands. That's the one I was thinking. Many Hands has like this really anxious like strumming guitar part to it that just like freaks me out, and I really love it. Like I love how she takes these traditional things and manages to build a lot of like tension and unease out of them.
Specifically I think one of the most interesting interpretations of that is I Who Bend the Tall Grasses feels kind of like just like a long hymnal sort of.
Yeah,
but just like a really like messy one in a way that's just like by the full of it, she's like full on screaming and just saying like, I don't give a fuck.
It rules
that's
much.
Probably the best, like the standout on the record. But the day this
my favorites are like a lot of the like much slower and quieter ones. Like I was really shocked by the beauty of like something like Pennsylvania Furnace, or I believe it's Perpetual Flame of Central.
I love Repent Now, Confess Now as well. But the day this album came out, there was a tweet going semi-viral that was a clip from Yeezus that was like someone just saying, y'all really listen to this on purpose? And I was like, that's funny. But then I fired up Sinner Get Ready, and I was just kind of sitting on the floor in my office being like, hell yeah, I'm vibing out to this Lingua Ignota. But she's really risen very, very quickly. I remember when All Bitches Die came out, it was sort of it was like not on streaming, and it was like a Bandcamp exclusive or something that you had to like get past a link and download to. And it was really felt like stumbling across something particularly special or particularly like not meant for the human ear. And then Caligula was a great record that was really, again, just sort of like, where did this come from? And the first time I heard Caligula was like right around the same time I had first heard Black Dresses or Euboa or all of this really weird sort of just like harsh noise, very feminine type hyper pop adjacent chamber pop harsh noise music, which is doing a lot of shit. So it's like forever tied to that sort of genre for me. But with Sinner Get Ready, I feel like Lingua Ignota has definitely like elevated into this hyper just like super well produced and super massive sound that like I find this record at the intersection of like the drone of that Euboa record and the strings of a Panopticon record, and then like the lyricism of a Joanna Newsom record, which is like checking all of my boxes.
That's the AJ button right there. That's
it's
AJ
true.
Moser's.
Oh, this immediately, like my immediate reaction to this album was like, maybe album of the year, like instantly. But the theatrics and the way that like every listen since my first listen, I've been like, a 56-minute record that has sparse, bare bones instrumentation and just a Catholic woman screeching like for nearly an hour can't be a pleasurable listen. But this thing really flies by every time I throw it on. To be honest.
It's like really shockingly well paced. Like,
and
it's a lot easier on the ears than Caligula too. Like that one was very much her standing like more traditional like harsh noise environments, and this is like her entirely stepping into her own thing.
I feel like structurally it's very front loaded. Like if you were to cut the record in half, you can identify the bits of songwriting and lyricism that are very stark on tracks like well, like the Order of Spiritual Virgins, I Who Bend the Tall Grasses, Many Hands, and Pennsylvania Furnace, and even Repent Now, Confess Now are like, oh, that's the song where she's doing X. That's the song where she's screaming, I don't give a fuck. That's the song where she's screaming, place on you my many hands. And then the back half of the record is almost this ambient orchestral suite where by the time it gets to the final track, I'm sort of like, this album's over already? I thought it was a much harsher listen, which is not to say that this is something that I find easy or pleasurable to listen to, but it's something that really compels me and does not make its runtime super known. And I consider myself a listener who is not well suited to albums that overstay their welcome. Like I oftentimes the best thing an album can
You mean like the Lord album?
The what? I couldn't hear you because I was just reaching below my desk to pop 3 melatonin at the same time. I don't know what it is you're talking about. But yeah, this is an album that will certainly not be for everyone, but if it's your cup of tea, I find it super compelling to revisit, especially just in the fact where I'm trying to pull out and identify all the individual elements that make it really great. And I think they blend together so well that I'm often just sort of like forgetting where one song ends and the other begins and just really appreciating this thing as a cohesive project. Certainly like easily in my top 10 of the year, if not my top 5. One of the best albums this year by far.
Oh yeah, same. This is just like absolutely insane.
It's pretty unbelievable, and I think you're totally right that like the big difference from Caligula is that like it's not that this album is less uncomfortable and scary, it's just that all that discomfort comes from her performance rather than from the instrument. Although, like I said, there is some tension building to the instrumentals. Like the organ is a very spooky organ. Like
Well, also, can we talk about the way that like Order of Spiritual Virgins literally has a jump scare in it?
Yeah, I want to say quickly, if you like this album but don't like being yelled at by an estranged Catholic woman, you should check out I'm forgetting the Kylie Malone album. I believe it's called The Spiritual Order, which is a few years old at this point, but it is just 90 minutes of ambient orchestral organ. The Sacrificial Code, one of my favorite ambient albums in recent memory. It is fantastic, and it's just Sinner Get Ready without the screeching.
Hell yeah.
But that's the best part.
my last note on this album is the part where in I Who Bend the Tall Grasses where she's like, I don't give a fuck, just kill. That was
so
that
good.
Was
iconic.
That is so good. But two, that was a Maddie last night after the Patreon record. I don't give a fuck. Yeah. Just kill him. Just do it. You have to do it.
I tweeted about this, but I was listening to this album while I was waiting for my large iced coffee in the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru, and then I pulled up and I was just sort of like, I'm normal. Relax.
Pay no attention to the choir exorcism that's happening in my car.
It is truly just like you listen to this for fun, and I say yes. I bought it on vinyl. My vinyl copy of this album showed up today, and I look forward to spinning it many times.
Yeah, it's the Ariana Grande and What About It. I mean, It's like, yeah, this thing is bone-chillingly terrifying, and it's a vibe.
I think we can go for the exact opposite vibe now.
Yes, we can pivot dramatically in energy. And what we can have next up?
We can shift.
Oh yeah, we gotta hit the button. We gotta hit the button. We gotta go.
We can shift it to a different energy, a very specific energy,
a mode.
We gotta go Billy mode.
We're going Billy mode.
We are. It's time, everyone. We have to go Billy mode.
Before we start, can we unpack what it means truly to go Billy mode? Like, the first time I listened to this album, I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. And I went to Billie Eilish's Spotify page, and I was greeted with not one, not two, but 3 separate modes with which to listen to this album. One called Billy mode, which says start here to experience the album the way Billie intended. Next, check out fan mode. Billie made this listening journey for the fans. After this, check out lyric mode. Deep dive into the writing of Happier Than Ever below. And it's just like the album multiple times with like
like each of them is just the track as they were. I was just like, what is this?
With just different like podcast interludes of Billie speaking, which is really annoying and off-putting and would almost make me angry if this album wasn't fucking fantastic.
Here's the thing
good.
that we're going to get into
so
immediately is that there's going to be a lot of moments on this album where you'll hear us talk about one thing. We'll be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. It does this. And then you'll hear us later on the album be like, oh, this album sucks. It does this. But the difference between the Billie Eilish album and the Lorde album, for example, and the difference between a lot of these albums is that some of these artists remembered to make the songs good, and some of these artists did not remember to make the songs good. And it's simple as that. Like
I wouldn't go that far. I think there's a much more obvious difference, and it's simply that some of these artists went Billy mode and some of them didn't.
Lorde really could have.
That some people are in their Arby's era and some people are not.
Lorde could have benefited from going Billy mode for real, because I think one of the things that, to be serious, I think makes this record so special is that there's a lot of music right now that is emphasizing quietness and intimacy, and we've been talking a lot about the really great Larry Fitzmaurice piece where he talks about like the new emotionalism of pop music or whatever. And I was also listening to the new Indie Cast where they were talking about this record, and something Stephen Hayden said that's been sticking with me is he was like, quiet is the new loud. And basically in the 2010s, late 2010s, we're kind of seeing what happened in the 90s with like Nirvana and like what if we did quiet loud. Now it's just quiet. Now that's like the most compelling thing you can be, is quote unquote intimate and quote unquote like raw or whatever. And I think that we're starting to see the kind of shallowness of that kind of approaching, and how that kind of flattens out all intimacy in the same way that the industrialization of like quote unquote trauma, like how that has invaded like all of these much more like nefarious larger institutions of capitalism, and how that all that is gross. And this is all to say that Billie Eilish is not falling into that trap.
She's above that.
This is not the Clairo album. This is not the Lorde album. This is not the Phoebe Bridgers album, because these songs, when the songs are slow, they're not boring. This album understands that you can be intimate and you can have moments of quiet, but then you have to contrast those with loud. You have to contrast. There has to be dynamics. Like, I think the way that this album succeeds is that there are so many moments like, even though My Future isn't one of my favorite songs on the album, I really appreciate that like halfway through the song, it's like, okay, we're not going to be a ballad for the entire time. We'll give you a bass line and a little beat that slinks into the track halfway through. And then there's other moments like Happier Than Ever, which even more obviously does this, where it's like a very slow, tender song for the first half and goes full Your Best American Girl mode in the second half and just becomes this like heavy guitar song. And I think that you never
Easily
feel like
her
it's
best
just,
song too. Like
it's so
just,
fucking
like,
good. Yeah, ridiculous.
it is like so overwhelmingly good that you're just like, oh my God, where did this come from?
Yeah, and I also think that it helps that she is capable of. I mean, it was kind of the whole trick of the first album, but I think in this one it really shines through more. Just like, not only is she really good at singing quiet and intimate like that, but like the key is that the songwriting is good. Is that every single song on here, especially from the very beginning that it starts, like you really, I really found myself connecting with it and really found myself like, oh my God, the writing is just. She manages to make the I'm grappling with my fame album not cliche at all.
It's one of the best albums in recent memory to do that, and I think part of that is so hand in hand with the like massive and rapid ascent to fame that she did have.
Yeah, she's just like completely over it at this point.
It was so concentrated that like it almost forced her to have like a normal human being reaction to it, because it's like she was just so put on the escalator so immediately that it almost like for some people that makes it hard for them to like navigate it. But
you can look back at her reaction to winning Album of the Year at the Grammys, where she was like, don't fucking do this to me. Like, that's the look on her face when they announced that. It's really funny. And she's like, I don't want this.
I hate to keep bringing everything back to Lorde, but Lorde literally wrote a song about, oh, it was so great when I got to go to California and win Album of the Year. But California's spooky though. I kind of don't want to be there.
This album, in direct contrast to Solar Power, is like night and day, where Billie is just coming from such a more nuanced and like holistic viewpoint, and Solar Power is sort of doing the thing where it's like, what if I just like poked fun and made fun of the things
Well,
that
like, part of the problem is she's living in a world. She's living in a fucking like literal bubble. You live in New Zealand. You don't have any perspective.
she's smoking on that Hobbit weed, hitting those mids.
I also think that is one of the things that like annoys me the most about the Lorde album is like we're talking about how Lorde is like this privileged she's living in a bubble in New Zealand and making these songs that are just like painfully not reading the room. But Billie Eilish is not only like lives in LA, she's from LA. She's from the town that's supposed to melt your brain. But I think the thing that
she's normal.
That's the thing is people that are from LA are normal. People that move to LA like Maddie are evil sickos, and you can't trust them. That's basically
Billie Eilish is more normal than like 90% of us. I just listened to this record and I was like, she's got it figured out, and not in a weird like, oh, listen to the kids way. I'm just like, this is someone who like knows what they're about, and she I don't want to like out myself as the boomer of this podcast, but I never bought into the Billie Eilish hype. Like, I don't like.
I mean, I went back to that first album today, and it kind of is weak in comparison.
I never really
like the best thing it has going for it is like that bass frequency, which is just like
I just don't like when we were doing the car commercials. I had said it in the Discord, but like I couldn't connect with that first Billie album at all because I felt like all of the songs were trying to do like a gimmick or doing some sort of thing that was just like, this is what a pop song would normally do, but I'm not a normal pop artist. I'm doing like this thing. So like I don't like Bad Guy. I don't like any of the singles from that first album, and I really didn't connect with any of it at all. And so when Billie Eilish is like sweeping the Grammys, I'm like, this is just like poptimism coming to its natural conclusion. People being like, there's a cool edgy teen and we have to accept that cool edgy teens run.
It's not even that. It's
the
just
music
the Grammy
industry.
Voters are like, what are the kids like? The Grammy voters.
Well,
the
Grammy voters deserve to be.
The
Grammy voters deserve to be parodied in a redacted, but that's a different sort of conversation.
Exactly. No.
The whole Grammy institution needs to be parodied.
But so I threw on Happier Than Ever for the first time with just sort of this perspective where the singles from this album, My Future, Your Power, Lost Cause, Therefore I Am. I was like, I like these songs. She's doing actual songwriting. She's coming down to earth. And I find this entire album something that's really, really grounded and something that's super nuanced and has, again, incredible songwriting. And as Jackie was explaining, really minimalist production, but in a very smart way that's like using all of Billie's strengths to her advantage, which is like she has a very compelling voice. The production from Phineas is very like he is very smart and knows how to make pop songs. And I think the thing that bit them in the ass on that first record, at least for me, was they knew how to make pop songs. And on that first record, they avoided all of the things that made compelling pop songs. And we're like, this is what would make a good pop song. We're going to make something that's surprising. And I hate to say it, subverts your expectations. And I just like, that's not how I like listening to music. But so this album, I find very soulful and very just, like down to earth and honest. And I think, again, like I said it about the Lingua Ignota record, but for an album that's 56 minutes long, I find this very breezy. And I find the entire thing, like she's constantly spitting. She's constantly in Billie mode. She has great insights. I find the look at her perspectives and her personal story and all of the anecdotes that she's sharing, I find them all very interesting. And I think, this is a great record. And the weird thing about it to me is that it feels like the Poptimists cashed in their chips on Olivia Rodrigo this year, because for the follow-up to a like Grammy sweeping global superstar
this has
album,
just been like really quiet.
I feel like the Billie Eilish album dropped and people were like, right.
The people that are going to bat for this record are not the like I love pop music.
Look at
people.
us.
Yeah,
Look,
it's us.
We're the ones
me.
going to bat for it. We're the like
exactly because
like normally we're the freaks who are like don't listening to pop music at all. And, like,
good.
And we're here like
it's like
having to
more
get
of
on a soapbox about it.
It's more of a singer-songwriter record. It's like almost all ballads aside from the few pop standouts. And I just think this thing is tremendous. And it like genuinely shocked me how much I liked it.
Yeah. At first I kind of felt like my only complaint with this album, my kind of first couple of times through, is it just sort of felt like there are kind of two albums here. There is like what you're talking about, like the singer-songwriter record.
Well,
and then there is all this like
there's
the
three
pop
albums.
Phineas
There's fan
stuff.
mode, lyric mode, and Billie mode.
Jesus Christ! Oh my God! No, but like Yeah, but like the thing that I realized over time is like the pacing of the album and the track listing of the album is like really well executed, and so it allows for like the quieter, balladier moments to really segue really nicely. And I thought that some of the track listing choices on first glance, like having 3 of the biggest singles go track 13, 14, 15 is like what, huh? But like in the actual flow of the record, it really works. Like therefore, I am happy with like that stretch. My one thing I will, if I'm gonna be a nitpicky for like a little second, I don't really like NDA as much as everyone else in the chat seems to like NDA. I think that's the one that feels the most like it's trying to do the first album again with the production. Like it just
NDA. And that's fair. I just think it's a better iteration of like.
I agree. No, yeah, like, I think it's a better version of what she was doing on the first album. But in this album that is like so deliberately like taking a step in a new direction. It just was like, okay, yeah, this is I like this more than like some of the first album singles. But like AJ, I didn't really connect with the first record much at all. And obviously there are some like very obvious reasons why I'm connecting a lot more with the Billie Eilish album now than I was in 2019.
Woo, that's us.
But there's also like I just think the songs are way better. Like I like with Rose, like I went back to the first album and I think this is like a huge step, and it's not like she
like literally there were only like
the talent was there. It's just
like actually enjoying it.
It really it like all comes together on this record in a way that is special.
This one feels exactly to me like what people said the first album was to them, which was just like, holy shit, a superstar talent has basically emerged out of nowhere, and like from song one, you realize that this is like one of the greatest talents of our generation. And as someone who did not feel that for the first record,
and when you hit song 15, you're like, oh yeah, this is like the great.
Yeah, she really went Billy mode on them. NDA and Male.
Also, can we talk about how Oxytocin sounds like a Tenet soundtrack type beat?
Unbelievably good. Yeah, get Billy. Billy should like do the song. If they ever make another James Bond movie, I feel like Billie Eilish should do the theme song.
Wait, you mean the one where he has one? Do you want one where he has time to die or no time to die?
No, James Bond. The thing I don't know many things about James Bond because I'm not British, but the thing I do know about him he has 0 time to die. That man will never have time to die. So,
oh my god,
we should give him some time to die.
We should give him some time to die.
I really like Oxytocin. I also really like I Didn't Change My Number, which like Oxytocin sounds like a Pharrell beat, and I Didn't Change My Number and also Overheated sound like, oh, that's what Justin Timberlake was trying to do on 2020 Experience, but like someone did it correctly. Like, oh, yeah. Wonderful. Glad to see someone circled back around and fixed that.
I genuinely don't think there's a single song on this album that I'm like, bad, cut it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's nothing bad. I just think the like slower ballady numbers are a little weaker at times, but like it's very solid. It's probably the best pop record all year this year.
I would probably agree with that. Like the Olivia Rodrigo album, I liked. Mm-hmm. I think Driver's License is and always has been a very bad blasé ballad that people just lost their mind over because like it was about a Disney Plus show or whatever, and they could be like, "Ooh, she's serving tea, sis, slay." And this, again, I'm 45 years old. This Billie Eilish album, it shocks me that for someone who lit the world on fire 2 years ago, this album that I think is genuinely incredible comes out, and everyone's like, I mean, we all know Billie Eilish is great. It's fine. It's a good album.
Yeah, but look at that Olivia Rodrigo chick over there.
Yeah, and like not even to pit them against each other because that thing also
they're both good.
I feel like this is also a product of just like, and this is another thing with the Lorde album is that like nothing can properly have a cultural moment anymore in the weird fucking fractured society and culture that we live in.
Yeah, because the discourse machine literally rattles in such a way where like you only get 5 minutes maximum.
Everyone is locked at home and just has their attention glued to the next thing that's happening. But it's so stark and surprising to me that this Billie album dropped. Like, again, the most successful, at least critically,
pop star of the last 5 years,
drops a hugely acclaimed follow-up album, and the reaction is generally, yes, good. What's next?
And it's not like the album is like flopping. Like you look on Spotify and it's like, oh, everyone is like,
everyone's going Billy mode. These fans can't get enough of Billy mode.
But you're exactly right that like
I keep hitting the Billy button. I keep hitting the fan button. I keep hitting the lyric button. I keep. Oh wait,
the fact
hang on.
that she has like
fourth mode on the page.
The fact that she has multiple. Wait, there's a fourth mode.
Yeah, it's Arby's mode.
God damn it.
You have to hit New Game Plus, and then you get the Billy mode Plus option, which has permadeath enabled.
You die at the end of Happier Than Ever. Just the song.
But yeah, I really like this album. I think like I was saying earlier, like it seems like it should be leaning into so many pop music cliches, as it's both the I'm Adjusting to Fame album and also the breakup album, and it does both of them so well and so insightfully, and also like it's obviously because she is a young person, but like there have been so many attempts of like, I mean, like Lord is a great example of like people that are trying to tap into quote unquote the zeitgeist and are trying to like tap into like what people are thinking and feeling about now. And with the Lord album, it is so like surface level. It feels like all of the stuff that is very like now and of the moment is like set dressing. Like she's saying like, oh, what words can I say that I've seen on Instagram? Transcendental meditation, this, whatever. And Billy's album feels very of the moment in a genuine and personal way, and it's like, oh, this is how teenagers who are alive right now feel, and how
especially
and
like this
what they
teenager
go through. Yes,
with a hyper focused, just like what fame does to a person. And I find Happier Than Ever to be like one of the most direct, honest, and just like incredibly real pop albums that have come out in a very long time. And it's shocking to me that everyone was just kind of like, Billie Eilish is good, that's what she does. And I'm like, there's a lot going on here that's very unique to her.
Yeah, I agree.
It's pretty great. We can move on.
Yes, indeed. Now to some albums
we gotta talk about the other.
Now to talk about some albums that have no discourse and nothing to get into. These are gonna be
Don't use that word.
Really,
they're both
really simple discussions.
They're both great. Y'all can pick where we start, because
I want to start with Foxing.
I was gonna say let's draw down that moon, baby.
So yeah, Foxing, first release since 2018, like universally agreed upon. Near My God.
They called it their OK Computer. They were like, we think we made the best album of all time. And Nearer My God is an album that sounds like a band who thinks like they've made the best album of all time. And I think
they were right.
And they were right. And I think it's important in hindsight to recognize that like since they were in a normal world and they put out a widely, at least for like the circles that they run in, acclaimed and beloved record, and pretty much an indisputable classic in Near My God.
An emo classic, which is like the best you're gonna get.
Yeah, like even the people that are like pretty anti-Foxing, or people that are just like, I'm not into that emo, that fifth wave emo crap or whatever. Like that record, like even the skeptics, even the skeptics had to tip their cap and be like, okay, you guys did a pretty good album.
Yeah, and so I think it's important to recognize that like since then they've gone independent, like have funded themselves through Patreon, have started their own record label. And as someone who has been through one too many convoluted marketing campaigns, they had a very convoluted rollout for this album that involved...
And it's worth mentioning, like, they were one of the 10 most played albums on Spotify the day they dropped. Their album dropped. They're doing ridiculously well.
Yeah, they had a convoluted ARG and did a lot of singles and a huge rollout and a big press cycle for this album. And so... all of which is to say that, like, even though Near My God was easily my album of the year that year, in my top 5 of the decade, probably one of my favorite records of all time, all things considered, when they started rolling out the hype cycle for Draw Down the Moon, I was sort of at a distance and just kind of like taking a wait and see approach to just be like, well, the singles from Near My God like immediately grabbed me, and I knew classic OTW, like this album is going to be a huge, big thing. Speak with the Dead did not do it for me as a single, and everything they had dropped since, like, it took me until about a week or two before the album came out to listen to like all of those singles, which I believe at that point was about
there were 5
about half of the album, to say
literally half of the album.
Yeah, I think I'll probably like this. I'm excited to see where this goes in sequence. And I know that we differ, but I like I like this album about as much as I think someone can like it, which is to say, it is great. It's fantastic. It's not as good as Nearer My God, but it's about as good as a Foxing album that isn't Nearer My God can hope to be. I certainly find it stronger than their first two records. I think it's an incredible follow-up to an album that's basically impossible to follow up. And I think that the diversions and the direction that they take this album are a very smart choice for what to do to follow up Near My God, because the only place naturally that you can go from Near My God is bigger, larger, more ambitious. And I think they hone in the songwriting, they hone in the lyricism, they hone in the instrumentation on this album, and just super focus on making something that's like this big emo pop record, which we tend to not get very many of. But this is like, it's been said before, but this is like an emo Sam's Town. This is like them just sort of going all in on
emo Foster the People.
Look, as someone who loves Torches, that comparison is a compliment to me.
Good.
Yeah, like, okay,
However, let me just differ my perspective on the rollout. So I heard Speak with the Dead, and I was just like, oh my god, they might do it better. Because, like, that is one of the best songs of the year, period. Like, I think Speak with the Dead is, like, such a huge step forward in their ambition, just showing, like, they still had it. And so then, as the rest of the singles rolled out, I was just like, oh god, what happened?
Let me give my little preamble before we get into the real meat of talking about this album. I was in a similar spot where I listened to Speak with the Dead, and I was probably between the two of you. I liked it. I definitely was like, this is a weird choice for a first single, especially once we learned it was like the last song on the album, which it kind of does have a last song on the album vibes.
I never agree with that move. Never release the last song on your album as a single.
Oh, I agree with that. I wish I hadn't heard it after knowing it was the last song on the album.
The literal only time that has in recent memory where that didn't fuck me up was Worm in Heaven from the Proto Murder album, because that song weirdly works as both a single and as the album closer. And it wasn't like,
and it's literally just a perfect song.
Yeah, it wasn't anticlimactic because I got to it again and I'm like, yeah, it's still perfect, but now it hits even harder in the context of the albums. And so I hear Speak with the Dead and I'm like, all right, this is good. And then I listened to Go Down Together and I was like, oh, interesting. I don't hate this, but now then the singles kept coming and coming, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna listen to all of these because they're doing too many singles, they're doing too much with this rollout. Like,
it's just like any pop album. No
offense, boys, but I completely retired from ARGs once.
I agree.
After Death Grips.
Death Grips, like, you cannot do it.
Exactly. So I
see, but the nice thing about the ARG is you get goodies. Like, for example, there's an alternate version of If I Believed in Love that only I have here because it was released in the ARG.
Oh, nice. But my thing with this album is that I want to preface all of my criticisms I have, which is that I am glad that they made this album. I am glad that they took the step that they took on Near My God, and they interpreted the right lessons, I think, which is just to fucking go for it and not really care about, like, how is this going to fit into the current landscape? How are we going to, like, get people there? They just sort of realize that, like, the best mode for this band is exactly what you're saying, is like trying to make the greatest album of all time. And the thing that made that album so compelling is that it stood out so much from the landscape of indie rock at the time. That's like, oh, this band is being ambitious, and not just in a, like, music critic way, but, like, you can tell that they're putting their fucking soul into this, that they're like, this is everything we have and we have to give this everything we've got because this is our last real chance to, like, make our dreams come true. And you can feel that, like, desperation and all of that. And so I think that the idea of them saying, we're going to keep pushing it, we're going to try to do something that, like, very likely could blow up in our face, like what Ian was saying on IndieCast, like, this is one of the first records in a while that is really setting itself up for people to just dunk on it. Like, they know that when they went out to make a record with this kind of a sound, that they're just inviting the cool kids to sneer their noses at it. And so, like, I genuinely admire what they are trying to do, and I also appreciate it because, quite frankly, I should be the target audience for this album. Like I think the band Foals is good. I think that a lot of the car commercial indie rock of the 2010s is actually good, and that it just gets drowned out by the stuff that actually made it to the top of those charts, which, as we discussed in the car commercial number ones, is putrid. I used to have somewhat of a nostalgia for that era, and the car commercial number ones helped like dissuade me of any of that nostalgia and remind me that I was just in high school and that's all that happened. Like a lot of that music is not actually good, but some of it still holds up. Like I have a lot of room in my heart for like very poppy, sleek indie rock, like Passion Pit in stores now still. Like those Passion Pit albums,
Capital City.
Still, hey, there's the best song on this album maybe is the one that sounds the most like Capital Cities, but we'll get there. The point is that I should really, really love this record, not only as someone who was completely converted to like full on Foxing fandom by the last album, but like also as someone who has an appreciation in my heart for this kind of glitzy pop music. Because like you were saying with Sam's Town, like I think The Killers is something I thought about a lot with this record, because I think this album
it big time sounds like The Killers. Like he's doing a Brandon Flowers.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
like
maybe that's why I don't like it that much.
And but see, that's the thing, Rose. The Killers were like my first favorite band before Radiohead was my favorite band, and I don't connect with this album particularly, and only in moments. And we can kind of get into the nitty gritty with the tracks and like what we think like specifically works and doesn't work with us. And I'm not really like disappointed with this album overall. I think it's pretty interesting, and there's definitely like tracks from here that I'm taking with me, and tracks from here that when they play them live, like I'm going to be excited to see them do I Believe in Love. I'm going to be excited to see them do Bialystok. I'll be excited to see them.
Oh God, I disagree with like every one of y'all's track takes. Oh God.
Okay, we can't get too much into that, but to close up my kind of finishing thoughts, I think that the problem with this album, my kind of big picture problem with it, is that unlike Nearer My God, which is an album that is all over the place and miraculously works, like that is an album that is stretching itself in 4 different directions and 5 different stylistic influences and is melding it all together perfectly. This record, I feel like, is just, even though it seems like it's a little more streamlined and focused, it still feels really confused to me. And I think the biggest indicator of that is the intro track 737, which is great and is really, really good. And after holding off on all the singles, I put on 7037.
Oh, yeah.
I put off 737 and I was like, all right, I've listened to like one of the singles once and one of the singles once, and I've barely touched this album. Let me get into this. I put on 737 and I'm like, they've done it again. Classic again. And then the thing is that the rest of the album, 737 is the intro to a different album. 737 is the intro to a different...
You listen to it and you're like, oh, is this the album where they go like really sicko guitar mode? And it's like, no.
It does absolutely nothing to set you up for even the very next song on the record, which I don't hate Go Down Together.
They transition into each other perfectly. I'm sorry to say it, but like there's literally the outro.
The moment to moment handoff of those two moments is executed very well. I understand exactly what you're saying, but conceptually,
songs next to each other,
they sound like they come from 2 different bands. It sounds like a very good transition on a mixtape where you're going from one band's song to a different band's song, as opposed to...
I kind of feel like that's what they're shooting for on this album, is just them being like, look, on this album, to quote Chance the Rapper in 2016, we're just having fun with it. And I love to see them I love to see them do it. I love to see them just having fun with it on this album, because Near My God was such a like serious and ambitious and go for broke record. And there's there's a line on this album where Connor says like, ever since I got started, I've been going for broke. And this album in a way feels like a victory lap for them after the reception of Near My God, of just saying like, we've been trying to prove that we can make a record this great for our...
So we're gonna keep trying to make a record even more than we have, just to show you like...
I don't think they're trying to make an album better than Near My God with this one. I think there's...
No, I don't mean like quality wise. I just mean like they're going for it no matter what. They're fully committing to this
I think they like wrote... I think I think the mindset of this album is just like, let's just fucking write some bangers. Let's write some good, fun songs. And I think they totally accomplished that on this album. I think the first 5 songs, again, if you wanted to zone in and just cut this record in half, I think the first half of this record is unimpeachable. I think the first 5 songs in this album are a perfect flow of just incredible emo pop music, like undeniable indie rock bangers from 737, which like is the perfect opener for this album, which does Grand Paradise in a way that is essentially like night mode to what Grand Paradise does, which is this just incredible build. And 737 comes in and is like, yes, acoustic twang, calling back to the dealer, calling back to Albatross, and just being like, this is where our roots are, and then just exploding into this thing. And then immediately afterwards, you're in uncharted territory with all of the like, you know, sparkling pop music that's on Go Down Together. And then Beacons is just this big, fast, booming track that I think, again, like just has momentum. I think this album has so much fun with itself and brings in so much momentum that it's sort of, every time I've listened to it, it's kind of just like impossible for me to not take this record for what it is, which is just like straight up fun. Like they're doing goofy. It didn't work for me on the singles and individually, but they're doing just like goofy D&D role play and whatever it is that they want to do. And they're just sort of like cosplaying with this record and trying out different sounds. And while I like understand that holistically it does not make for the most compelling record to be like, we're going to jump between snappy pop music and, you know, twinkly, sparkling emo guitars and all of these songs. But I think, if anything, Nearer My God defined what a Foxing song sounds like, which is a big, ambitious, sprawling sound, not defined specifically by any lyrical patterns or instrumentation, but just again defined by that
feeling.
Defined by that ambition. And I think what they've done on this album, again, in shrinking the scope, in shrinking the size, they've honed in on exactly what it is that makes those Foxing songs so good. And I think the lyricism on this record is genuinely incredible. I think it has some of Connor's best lyrics, like that album I quoted earlier before. And I think just the intro to Draw Down the Moon, the single, is so perfect. Never gonna stop loving you. If I could have, would I done it by now? We circle like salmons in holy pools, gathering speed until we can't slow down. It's just like every time I listen to that, I'm like, that's fucking perfect. They are writing a perfect pop song right here. And that song, Into Where the Lightning Strikes Twice, is probably the best stretch of this record, which is just like, boom. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're doing exactly what they said they were doing with this album, which was just like, boom, digestible, easy, fucking compelling, danceable emo music, which is, you know, is rare and is, again, embarrassing for someone to try to make. But Foxing are probably one of the most honest bands in the industry right now, where they are always just trying to do what it is that they want to do. And I think what they're doing on this record is not what they were doing on Nearer My God, which is probably the thing that's most striking to most people, because you have to remember that what they did with Nearer My God off-put a lot of the hardcore Foxing fans.
Oh, I remember. I went to the Foxing gig and like saw in person like all the people that like had their arms crossed, like, yeah, whatever, this new album's fine, but I hope they better do Rory tonight.
Yeah, it sounds like Linkin Park. They're doing fucking Radiohead shit,
so
and we don't want to hear that. Yeah,
I want to get into my takes because I got some takes.
I was gonna say, I was trying to hold myself back that whole time. I didn't want to just pop AJ's balloon, but go ahead, Rose.
So this is the dealer to Near My God's the Albatross.
Oof.
They're doing they're doing all their albums in here. I agree.
This is what I want to get to, and I think it works to very mixed effects, to say the least. Like I think there is not a 2-track stretch that I can put together, and I'm like, this is a good one too. Like even the ones I like back to back are just like, these don't go together. Like, here are all the songs I like on this record. Go Down Together, Draw Down the Moon, maybe Cold Blooded, and Speak with the Dead. Those are all. This is just a very ineffective record, and there are parts on here that are just like outright ugly. Like, just very garish textures. Like, specifically the vocals on like If I Believed in Love are some of the worst I've heard from Connor. Like, I was genuinely shocked when I heard this, because it's like, this sounds awful. Like, I don't know what it is, but just like that part where he's just like screaming, like, what do you believe in? I'm just like, shut up, please.
I unfortunately,
it's like the first time that I've ever like actively been annoyed by him.
I love that vocal thing, but that's only because I am a disciple of the Paul Banks school of shouting nonsense over guitars, and I think that.
But like, I like weirdo shouting. I listen to John Darn yell like like on a monthly basis, I listen to like dudes who like go in there and they're like, I went to Alabama, like they sound like
Yeah.
that. I don't care about vocals, but this drove me crazy. And it's just like little ticks and little textures. I'm just like, this doesn't sound right for them. Like, I think I think Cold Blooded has no ideas going on other than that hook. Like, I think the lyrics are nice.
One
It
of
is
the
a
best songs
sentiment
on the
that I
album.
can
I know.
relate to, but
I
like,
think Cold
as
Blooded
a song,
slaps.
like, give me something other than that hook, please. Like, I am going to die here if I have to listen to this one more time.
Yeah, like I said it in the chat and I was rightfully called out, but I said I have pretty much the hottest take someone can have on this album that isn't it's better than Nearer My God, but that I think the track that like just doesn't jive with me the most is Speak with the Dead.
And that's the thing. Like,
I think that's
Speak
fine.
with the Dead does not belong on this record. It belongs on Near My God 2, which is not this album. And Speak with the Dead is like one of the best songs of this year. Like, it checks all of my stupid boxes. Like, they have a section of the song called the Steely Dan section. They literally call it that. They have Yoni Wolf on a feature, which is just like, oh, of course I like that. They have like this just 7-minute grand like slow epic just like talking about just the most miserable subject humanly possible about wanting to see your dead friends again and speak with them, but realizing that you can't linger onto that attachment without like hurting yourself. And it's just like, oh god, this is just such a good song. And then you listen to the rest of the record you're attached to, and it's like, what is this doing here?
I think that as much as there's a lot of like some of it is the flow of it and like how it feels like it's kind of ping ponging between these different ideas without really feeling like. But I think a lot of it is not to do with that kind of stuff and more to do with like the actual, like Rose is saying, like the songwriting itself. Like I think the biggest example of that for me is Where the Lightning Strikes Twice, because that is the one that is most deliberately trying to press my serotonin button by just doing a Sam's Town Killers chugging guitar thing. And the problem with that song is that the hook isn't good. The hook is just not. Connor singing Where the Lightning Strikes Twice over and over again is just not a good or catchy hook in any way, shape, or form, and I don't like it. And that song
because the secret hook of that song is I Want to Go.
I get where everyone is coming from with this album, and
throws me off about that song is like it's got a weird disco strut, which is
I like that.
Not
that's
something
the thing
I have ever asked for in a foxing song. Like
I disagree.
But that's what this band does. Is they give you shit you never thought to ask for, and that's entirely what Near My God was.
Like I don't think all of these new ideas work. That's the problem. Is like they're doing things that are new, and I appreciate them going for it like whole hog. Like, but half of them don't work.
I would love to know what doesn't work on this album because I
already said which tracks I don't like.
Yeah.
737 Beacons. Beacons can maybe pass as like
Rose, you are simply naming my favorite songs on this album, so I cannot really like you haven't missed yet. You haven't missed yet
at times. Like, and also a thing about At Least We Found the Floor. Like, please, for the love of God, stop doing acoustic interludes on your album. It wasn't fun. It's never been fun. Will Toledo did it last year, and I wanted to strangle him, and I want to strangle the guys in boxing for doing it too.
I think the acoustic.
Acoustic interludes are not.
I think they're fine. I think there's a lot.
It doesn't fit here. That's the problem. The thing is, like people keep making like car commercial music and then being like, I could put a song with acoustic guitars in it here, and it doesn't fit.
I get where everyone is coming from with this, and I feel empathy for both positions, and I kind of feel like I'm a little in between. Where like I don't feel like this record is like them falling on their face. Like I think this record is.
I don't think it's bad. I just think it's like a gentleman's 6.5.
That's generous.
That is kind of in. I'm maybe like a light 7, and I agree that I probably will like these songs more, like Maddie was saying, when I get to see them live. But I would also like to offer the very fair counterpoint, which the other day in one of the group chats I'm in, I believe, not to put him on blast, but I think Cam was very specifically responding to one of Maddie's tweets about how the Foxing album sounds better once you see it live. And Cam was like, I don't have fucking time to go see this band live to make the record be good for me. I'm on the bus. Like make the record good for me now. And I get that kind of feeling of like, the thing about this album is that it should be what you were saying about it, and I'm very, very glad. I'm genuinely glad this album works for you the way that it is, because that is exactly what I was trying to. I was sitting in my car listening to this album, and I was doing the Jay-Z head nod gif where it's like I was trying to get into it. And I think my craziest thing where you're just like blowing my mind is the side B is just so light years better than the side A on this album. I have no idea where that take comes from, AJ, and I love it.
Well, side B is them doing Dealer again, right? Like side B is muted and more restrained. And I think
really, like, I Believe in Love is like the one moment on this album where it feels like they're really like cutting loose and going, like, the second half of that is
I Believed in Love is spacious and explodes in a way that like it feels like a band who made Dealer and then learned from Nearer My God made. But the front half of this record is a band who made Nearer My God being like, what the fuck could we possibly do next? And every single song on side A is just them being like, we're gonna like have fun. Nearer My God was us being very serious and being take us seriously and doing that so well that fucking everyone who listened to this record,
serious is the thing. Like
side B is just them. Like side B feels like foxing in their bag more than they have been since 2015, basically. Which like they've got a good bag. Like I liked those foxing albums, but as I was saying, like, again, at the end of my at the tail end of my long-winded rant earlier, it's important to remember that those first two foxing records were very, look, if you like emo, you like these albums, but these albums are not cool and they're not widely accepted. And Nearer My God was foxing, publicly reckoning with the fact that they were only acknowledged as like an emo band for emo heads and saying, no, we can make an album that is like widely accepted in the genre sphere of indie rock, and doing it so fucking well that retroactively everyone was like, we've always liked foxing. They've only ever made good music, because those first records like did not have a warm critical reception, and foxing was not a band that people widely acclaimed. And with Nearer My God, they did it so fucking well that people were like, we've always liked foxing. And on Draw Down the Moon, foxing is doing the shit they have always done and saying, y'all have always liked this, right? And the folks who came on board with Nearer My God have to reckon with the fact that, like, yeah, this is fucking what a foxing record sounds like. And it's good and it's great, but they're wild. Those boys are a little nutty with it. They be going sicko mode.
I get exactly what you're saying, and I think that is some of the people that are coming to this record are very much coming to it with like, and I don't even think this is Rose or I think this is more like, there are some people that liked Nearer My God, and just the very idea of, without even hearing the record, hearing that they're taking inspiration from like Passion Pit, there are some people that are just kind of throwing this record out with the bathwater and are like, you guys chose the wrong next step, and therefore I'm not going to vibe with this. Here's the thing. One of my favorite songs on Nearer My God is the title track of the album, Nearer My God, which is the most blatantly car commercial-y song on the album, and I think is the song on that album that this new album sounds most like. This new album feels like, what if we did a whole record of songs that were like anthemic and big and catchy and a little more straight to the point.
Not to name any names, but I just categorically cannot agree with the fact that anything on this album sounds like car commercial music. Some folks have said it.
It does, though.
AJ, I like it.
How can you not listen to
AJ,
this and think like what we listened to for like 3 months?
Listen to the beat of Bialystok and then listen to Safe and Sound by Capital Cities and acknowledge that those two things are drawing on similar music.
Very different.
I agree.
There's a very simple difference. There's a very simple difference. The foxing song is good. That's the very simple difference.
AJ, we need to get back to this, because I was making a point.
There's an influence there.
I was making a point, which is that Nearer My God is the song on the previous record that this, can we agree that that's the one that this one sounds the most like? It sounds like,
I was gonna say Slapstick
or even Slap. Those are both good examples. Like the singles of Nearer My God, those kind of poppier moments is like what they are chasing on this record. There is not one hook on this album even like a fraction as good as the song Nearer My God. That's the thing. There is nothing on this record that has gotten stuck in my head the way that Nearer My God just like drove into my brain. That doesn't mean the song songs on this album are bad, it doesn't mean like the lyric. I've grown. I've come around a little bit on the lyricism on this album after being like very underwhelmed by it my first time through. And there's stuff that's like you're talking like that line on "Draw Down the Moon" and some other stuff like that has grown on me. But I thought it was just weaker from a songwriting perspective than the last record. And then so when that's combined with like some really fucking audacious songwriting production decisions and the fact that this record, I think that the record is mixed well. I don't think that the change in producer from the last record is like, which member of the band is the one who mixed this record again? Because I know that this is mixed by one of the guys in the band.
No, it's not mixed. It's like produced by one of them and then mixed or mastered by John Congleton.
Yeah, and they also
Congleton did this fucking record.
Yeah, they also
he didn't produce it. He just mixed.
They also lost
two members.
A member, between. So like again, that's another thing about this album is they're operating at 3/5 of what they had on Near My God, and these songs sound huge. And you look at like the lineup that they're working with here, and I don't know who they're touring with because I have not seen them live yet. Shouts out to Maddie Coward. But these songs sound so fucking big for a band that's smaller than the band that made Nearer My God. And these songs take up so much space and just feel so huge and are so announced. And maybe that's the thing that's giving people the impression that these songs are corny or car commercially or arena rocky. But I just think that these songs like fucking come in to have fun and do so in a very effective and efficient way. Like I don't think there's anything on this record that overstays its welcome. I don't think there's anything on this record that isn't unearned. And if I can say something nice about Speak with the Dead, which is probably my least favorite song on this record, it's that by the time you get to the end of this record, you are ready for something sort of down tempo and contemplative, because so much of it has been, again, sugary and fun on purpose, because that's what this record is trying to do. I just think it's Foxing coming in and saying, let's have a fucking good time. Foxing having a good time and then saying, I hope y'all had a good time. And every time I listen to this record, I do.
So for the record, Eric from the band produced it with a little assistance from Andy Hull from Manchester Orchestra, and then John Congleton did the mixing.
And I think that my issue with this record is like not any of that, but I just think that I think that Chris Walla on the last record very clearly, without like giving him too much of the credit of what works for that last record, like it felt like it was more than just like, his production is what made those songs sound good, and now that he's not there and it doesn't work anymore. But it really feels like he helped them corral all these different ideas and things that they were trying to get into something that like worked cohesively. And I really appreciate that this record is simultaneously trying to sound bigger than the last one while also trying to lower the stakes a little bit and have more fun. I agree that is on paper the correct next step for them to make as a band. The part that we're just never going to have any kind of dialogue that makes any of us feel better is the part about which songs do we like and not like. Like, we've been making they forgot to make the songs good part, but that's the thing, is like, I am 100% with you there, AJ, on paper, and it is when the album is actually playing out that I start to have my, well, I know what you were trying to do here, and I would like to be part of the party that understands what's going on here. But for a lot of these, not a lot of these, I do feel Rose's problem, which is true, that like my likes and dislikes do come like back to back. Like Draw Down the Moon is like one of the better singles, I think, from this record, and Bialystok is one of my favorite like songs on the album in general, and I think one of the better choruses on the album. And those songs each are sandwiched with Beacons and At Least We Found the Floor and Where the Lightning Strikes Twice, which are not some of my favorite songs on the record personally. And it's just I think it kind of has, I don't know, the pacing of this album is weird. I appreciate that it's only 10 songs, and I appreciate how kind of streamlined it is, but I just think that it doesn't really, I don't know, it just doesn't cohere to me together as something that I find myself wanting to go back to and listen to.
I disagree.
Howie
voice. I disagree.
I'm glad you can enjoy this.
I disagree.
Yeah, I mean, like, and the thing for me is I was coming into this record with expectations on the floor of just being like, they won't top Near My God. I'm excited to see what they do next, for them. Like, this is a one for me, one for them. Near My God was the one for me, and I felt like they were doing a one for them on this record. And the fact that I've connected with it and that it surprised me so much was a genuine great feeling to me of just being like, wait a minute, the shit that they're doing on this album is different, but I like it. So
Yeah.
To each their own.
All right.
Well, after that really contentious record, we can talk about
Speaking of uncontroversial brands.
Exactly.
No debate whatsoever.
All fans of this band feel exactly the same way about this new record, and I think we can all take solace in that there is zero discussion to be had about this album. But I'm a lot more excited to talk about this album because here's
I hate being the
I feel bad for Rose because Rose has to do two. Although as we said before we recorded this podcast, I'm very, very glad that Rose is here.
This one I like a lot more. I will be fair. I like this one a lot more.
And also I'm glad that you're here to poke holes because this one is just going to be the all-time Jackie and AJ slobber over a record team up, because I don't think there has ever been anything that is a better distillation of the Venn diagram intersect of our brands than the new Deafheaven album Infinite Granite.
I need
the Deafheaven countertops.
I need someone to pipe in the drowned in sound clip that's, or whoever it was, just they've done it again on this album.
Oh my god. All right, so
let's give you a pain.
Give us a pain, Rose. Oh wait, we have Zencastr muted. We can't hear the pain. Anyways,
no pain for me, but this is an instant classic, folks. This is
God. Let's talk about. Okay, for anyone, just in case you're at home, you don't know who Deafheaven is. Deafheaven, they're a black gaze band, a metal band that is known for doing unmetal things like making their albums pretty and having a pink album cover. They put out Sunbather in 2013. It was huge.
They are a band who has never encountered any critical discourse.
Oh my god!
Whatsoever.
Yes,
everyone loves them.
Once.
And metalheads were like, "Welcome to the fold, Deafheaven. We love you, and we agree that you are a welcome new addition."
It's okay that your album cover is pink. We don't care.
Although,
in fact, we like that.
I really hate how much I'm bringing up IndieCast on this podcast. IndieCast does not exist, but they did point out how funny it is that like the only two metal albums in the last like 20 years that have had a real critical breakthrough with like the indie music critical mass are Sunbather and Boris by Pink. No, Boris by Pink. You have to make your album cover pink, or else the indie fans are not going to like your metal record. Is basically the.
I was gonna say the Sleep comeback because
I love that Sleep comeback album. But anyways,
that Sleep comeback.
Anyways,
good.
But basically,
so good,
the trajectory of their career is sort of like a reverse Div. Basically, is that like while Div has gotten heavier and shoegazier as they've gone on away from their dream pop, like Deafheaven have now, after making multiple records that are experimenting with this mix of like post rock and shoegaze, but with like a heavy black metal influence and screaming and all that, like now they have said we are taking the screaming back more than a little. He's singing in a non-screaming voice for most of this record, and we are going to make a straight up shoegaze album. And for metal hands, they're like, this is annoying. They should just make sick riffs and scream, and we will allow the counterpoints to be made on this record. But here's the thing: I fucking love shoegaze. I fucking love indie rock.
That's right.
I think AJ's not gonna like this part. I think this record does a way, way, way better job of taking the existing sound of a band and incorporating in those 2010s indie influences. Like, I think specifically Shellstar, I said this in the Discord and it blew me away. Shellstar sounds like fucking beach fossils. Like, it sounds...
Shellstar is a real estate song. Shellstar is a real estate song. They weren't bad.
Wow. Y'all are just naming names that I just don't like.
Yeah, if real estate wasn't a dog shit band that put me to sleep, they would have written
exactly.
a song like Shell Star.
That's the thing about Shell Star, is that I understand the bands that we're bringing up to compare it to are objectively boring. Like, my enjoyment of the band Beach Fossils is one of the whitest things about me as a person, and so I understand that like no one is getting fired up at the idea of this exhilarating, visceral band making a song that sounds like these boring milquetoast indie rock acts. But what this album does that is so fucking genius is it says there's a good core musical idea in those 2010s indie songs, and there's this prettiness and this lightness, and this Shellstar is like a twee, is the only Deafheaven song that you could call twee, is basically the thing about it. But the thing that makes Shellstar great and one of the best songs in the album and makes this whole album work is they're like, hey, here's the thing. What if real estate wasn't boring? What if we had someone on drums who actually was doing cool shit? And I think the drumming on this record is absolutely unbelievable and is like...
Oh, see, that's where I disagree. I think
Really?
It's a little worse than usual.
But
the lack of like the sicko metal stuff, like especially like the blast beats.
I disagree.
Those were such a critical element.
I disagree. I disagree.
When you get those in, when they're like going crazy on the track, like oh my god,
Rose, I love blast beats. Do not get me wrong. Here's what makes
like the whole thing is like it's missing an entire level of dynamics. Like you have the sicko stuff, and then you have the easier going stuff. You know, you have the balance. Like
I think there's so much dynamics on this record, but we can't. But really? I need to finish my point real quickly.
Well, there are dynamics. Yes, they're flattened out.
I need to finish. I disagree. I need to finish the point about the drumming, which is that this record, having a double kick metal drummer as the drummer for this indie rock shoegaze type record, it does so much to prevent these songs from ever sounding sleepy or boring, or like there's always, whenever, like I'm always like going back and forth. I'm listening to this record, like half of the time I'm like vibing out and just floating in the vocals and the guitars, and then every once in a while I'll check back in on what's going on in the drumming, and it's always something cool and sick. Like on later in the album, when on Villains, the one where he's straight up doing a Phil Selway Radiohead thing. And I think the thing that like clicked for me with this record is it's like the only metaphor I can come up for it is the thing in the movie Armageddon, where they talk about how it's easier to teach like oil drillers to be astronauts than it is to teach astronauts how to oil drill, even though that makes no fucking sense. The way I think about this record is like it's easier to teach a heavy band to go soft and pretty than it is to teach one of these soft and pretty indie bands to be heavy. And so like you there are bands that could make a shoegaze album that sounds like this, but those bands wouldn't be able to bring it up a level when this album needs to go up a level. And the thing that I love so much about it is that I don't think they entirely abandon the things about the Deafheaven sound that make them interesting. And sure, it takes mostly until the second half of the album to get to those moments, but I think the thing that I love so much about this album is that you spend the first half of this album, the first half of it is like full on indie rock, and is really like we are going to start the album with the most disorienting songs for longtime fans, and we are going to get you accustomed to this new reality, to the point where by the time I got to Villain, I had completely forgotten that this was a band that used to scream all the time. I had become so accustomed to this new environment, and I was so into it that I was like, I got all the way to Villain and was loving it so much that I had completely forgotten that Deafheaven was a band that screamed. And then so when the moment in Villain comes in where those drums pick up and it slams and you hear the screams, and you're just like, oh my god, I forgot that they could do this. But of course they did this for 3 albums. Like it's not like they needed to prove that they could still do it, but it's more like it hit harder because of the restraint of the first half.
The skeleton key to this album is that it's just a Deafheaven album. George is simply screaming less, because all of the instrumental soundscapes are essentially the same. Like there is less breakbeat drumming, but like the density and the layers of the guitars and everything that's happening there is just what Deafheaven sounds like. And that's sort of the thing that's made them so contentious and so controversial in the black metal / black gaze / indie rock / shoegaze scene, or whatever it is that they are, is that like they make music that sounds only like the music that they make. And you can point to it and say like, oh, they're doing Slow Dive, or they're doing Alcest, or they're doing Wolves in the Throne Room, or they're doing whatever it is that they are doing, but their sound is entirely their own. And Infinite Granite might be like, just by virtue of the fact that it is what it is, the most Deafheaven sounding album of all time. Like, this is the band at their truest and most honest form. And it might not be their best form. I don't think Infinite Granite is their best record, but as someone,
If you did, I would have to call absolute slander on you. Like,
put me in the guillotine. But I think it's a great record, and I think it's a great step for this band. Even if, like, yeah, like, I prefer. I think New Bermuda. This record made me appreciate what they're doing on New Bermuda even more. Whereas it's always been flirting with my favorite Deafheaven album, being my favorite Deafheaven album, and now listening to Infinite Granite, I'm like, of course, New Bermuda is their best record, because I think the instrumentals and the sort of interludes that they're doing, Deafheaven has always been incredible at pacing a record. That's one thing I think that's been undeniable in their discography. Whether it's an album like Sunbather that goes from heavy tracks to clear cut into the sort of piano-y, heavenly interludes, or something like New Bermuda that's like, you get 5 songs and all of these songs are going to move through instrumental suites and ambient interludes, and like, we're going to record audio from the George Washington Bridge and lay it over our song. That's just what you're getting with this record. And then into something like Ordinary Corrupt Human Love, which is an album that gets very close to, especially on its back half, flirting with the ideas that they bring forward on Infinite Granite, especially songs like Great Massive Color or The Gnashing or Mombasa, which are like, what if we held off on the screaming? What if we made that a little cherry on top of the song that was like the thing you like, as Jackie was saying? We know you're here for the screaming. What if we fucking edged you with the screaming and treated it like a Marvel Cinematic Universe post-credit scene that just said, the screaming will return. George Clark will return to those deep screeching vocals. And like, Mombasa makes a great outro for this record, but I really think the standouts, look, they picked the perfect singles for this record insofar as if you didn't connect with those singles, I don't think you're going to like this record that much. And by the time that all 3 of them were out, those are In Blur, Great Massive Color, and The Gnashing. By the time that all 3 of them were out, if you weren't vibing with something, or at least on board with what Deafheaven were doing, you probably weren't going to like this record. But my first impression of Great Massive Color was easily the best song I've heard this year. Still, so far, haven't heard a song better than Great Massive Color. They went absolutely sicko mode with it. They freaked it unbelievably. And yeah, I think this record, obviously, being a Deafheaven album, comes with a lot of expectations. And they're doing something, they're sort of just ripping off the Band-Aid of saying, they don't scream now. What if they don't scream now? And they don't scream now.
They fly now.
Yeah, they don't scream now, and that's okay, because the songs are still as dense and as atmospheric as they always have been. Like, that's the band that Deafheaven has been. Even if you thought they were just the band that had the really pretty screams, they make these big cacophonous soundscapes that just fucking transform over the course of a single song. And God, there are some good songs in this album that were not singles that are just like, goddamn, they are hitting exactly what they're doing. The run from Lament for Wasps, pretty much to the end.
Lament for Wasps, undefeated. I will give it that. That is this record's absolute triumph. Is like that and Villain back to back. Ooh,
yeah,
Ooh.
Undeniable. It's so good. And like, again, as I was saying earlier, to me, that's Deafheaven. That's what they do. They just do these songs that are big, immense, that build, that explode, and then that come right back down to earth.
I think, like, obviously I get why there are people that are like, this is not one of my favorite Deafheaven albums. That's a perfectly reasonable take. The people that are like, I can't believe they've done this, are the people that are just annoying to me, because like I agree 100%. Like, if you can't,
I mean, I'm not surprised by it.
Exactly. Like, if you can't listen to Dreamhouse and understand, like, at some point this band,
well, even like their last record, it was clearly a tee up for like whatever this is. Like, and I want to get into my unified theory of Ordinary Corrupt Human Love once we get into
it. We'll get into your full Deafheaven theory, which I'm excited. You've been teasing it, but I agree with AJ. I think this record is really great, and the reason, and as someone who is like still a relative novice to like heavy music genres in the grand scheme of things, like, I've been listening to like more hardcore stuff for the last couple of years. And so in the time, basically, like, from the release of Ordinary Corrupt Human Love, which is an album I actually liked when it came out, to now is basically like the period of time of me getting more and more into like heavy music and more into, and now like I no longer am a weak baby who thinks screaming is bad. Now I am galaxy brained and understand that screaming is good. But even with that in mind, Infinite Granted is the album I've always wanted Deafheaven to make. Period. Like this is because, as I said on Twitter, this is the album I want every band to make. Like this is the exact perfect. And Lily was really smart about this. She said basically like Deafheaven fans kind of fall into one of two camps, which is like some people want metal but prettier, and some people want indie rock shoegaze but heavier. And I am very much the second. Like I love the band Holy Fawn. I love this album. I love anytime you can give me the balance of the really pretty songwriting and the really beautiful chords with the fuzziness and the distortion of shoegaze. Like that's just always gonna hit the spot for me. And if you can bring some real like heaviness, like I love, don't get me wrong, like I really, really, really love, like, for example, the Slow Dive Comeback album. I think that album is great. I think
Undefeated.
It's wonderful. Love listening to it. I think this album, in addition to being like a very good Deafheaven album, I think this is like a better shoegaze album than that album, which sounds so sacrilegious because like Slowdive literally invented some of the shit that they're doing on this album. But like I think in terms of recent shoegaze releases, I think that what makes this record great is it's not just like, oh, what if Deafheaven did some shoegazy stuff? Like they are full, like the parts of this record that have absolutely no heaviness, absolutely no screaming, that are just kind of shoegazy indie rock work for me like completely. And so the fact that then you get to add, you get to build the layers,
have to be on board for or not. Yeah,
exactly. And then the fact that then they take that foundation and then they're able to build all these other things, because now it's like Villain is the perfect example of this in miniatures. Like the beginning of Villain sounds like a fucking Radiohead song, like the Phil Selway shit. I'm like, awesome, wonderful, love this. And then the second half of the song is like them screaming, and I'm like, guess what? I love this too. This other thing also good. Great job. Just like every single turn that track makes is me doing the Vince McMahon like reaction face, just like more and more each time they. And in general, this record I think just does such a good job of the way it builds over time. Like we're talking about, like the way that the first couple of tracks really set up the release on Villain, and the more heaviness of like the gnashing, and then of course the closer of Mombasa, which is just towering, and is as AJ saying, it is the after credits scene where it's like, oh, and by the way, we can still do this, and it can still rip as hard as anything else in our discography.
Look, Homeboy is speaking in tongues on the back half of Villain. Like I don't know what that man is saying, but he's just going nuts.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. I mean, I've been talking about this a bunch in the chat as we've been preparing for this episode, and I'm curious, anyone listening at home, you could write in. I am so puzzled at trying to describe what George's non-screaming singing voice sounds like, and I keep having, like, I swear to God, I've made a list of like 10 different different things that it reminds me of, but even still, every time I keep listening to it, I keep going back and I'm like, no, there's something more specific that I'm hearing in his voice that is like triggering a sense memory of listening to some other indie band from the 2010s, and I can't like put my finger on it exactly. There are moments on this album where he sounds like Kevin Parker. There are moments on this album where he sounds like Paul Banks, specifically on.
It sounds like the real estate guy.
On the gnashing, he sounds 100% like he's doing a Paul Banks impression, and that's why that song fucking rocks.
Yeah, the gnashing is so good.
Oh, see, that's my least favorite of the three.
The gnashing spends the first half of the runtime being like, what if Interpol sounded like the shoegaze band Weed? And then they spend the second half of the runtime of that song saying, what if Radiohead but shoegaze? And that 1-2 combo is like, that's just perfect right there. That's why the gnashing owns.
Yeah, the gnashing is like, oh, That was a fun song. I'm going to sleep. Psych, I'm awake. And what if I just fucking freaked it on you?
Yeah, the way that song. And I also really, really like, I think the gnashing is so helpful in the pacing of this record, because the one thing about this album is that, like, so many of the songs, and I think the Pitchfork review mentioned this, but like so many of the songs start in the same way, where like they have this kind of slow ambient build and then they work their way up. But the great thing about putting the gnashing where it is on the track list is it's basically the inverse of Villain, because it starts at its heaviest moment and gets progressively prettier and more melodic as it goes along. It's like a perfect inverse of what Villain is doing. And so I think it provides a much needed burst of energy at the beginning of it that prevents the track list. Because if you have an entire record of like 9 songs that all start slow and get heavy by the end, like that starts to get repetitive. And I think they do a really good job of varying things up. I think my only 2 real nitpicks with this record is I think Neptune Raining Diamonds is a fine interlude, but if
there's no need for it.
Yeah,
it's a little sleepy. Yeah, like
it's just too long is the thing. And it's like, if you're gonna have an interlude in your album, it should feel purposeful, which it does. It's not like it feels like just tacked on for no reason. But then B, it should not overstay its welcome, and I think that's where it kind of misses.
That's obviously.
See, but that's the thing. Like, I feel like compared to other Deafheaven interludes, which I feel like always serve a thematic or like sonic purpose that like ties into what the record gets into, and I will get into this with Ordinary Corrupt Human Love because it's very important.
We'll get to your theory in one second, but I just had a galaxy brain thought. What if you made this record exactly the same? It's the same in every single way, except we replaced Neptune Raining Diamonds with the interlude from Psychopomp. Boom, greatest album of all time.
It'll be the best album of all time.
Perfect. Having any Psychopomp in it automatically makes it the greatest.
The 2 moments on this album where I start to be like, is this as good as I think it is, are Neptune Raining Diamonds. And then even Other Language, which
that was exactly what I was going to say. Like AJ and I, same brain.
They don't.
Yeah, Other Language. That one.
They don't do the interludes as well on this track. Probably because so much of it is as down tempo.
It's so dependent on like having big song moments.
The other records do the big moments so well that the small moments are just like, Jesus Christ. Thank God. Like, that's probably why New Bermuda has emerged as my favorite Deafheaven album, because that's the one where it's just like, look, you don't get a break. Like, we're just fucking packing these all into the same songs. You get 5 songs. They're going to be big,
but that's the thing. I want to. This is my unified theory of Deafheaven.
Go ahead.
Okay, the front half of Ordinary Corrupt Human Love is the best album.
It's about all the albums. I want to segue from you.
Go ahead.
Bermuda talk. So Deafheaven for their entire careers has been trying to do one thing and one thing only. They've been trying to find the in-between point of like that kind of black metal, like black gaze generally, like just big, obvious, like harsh screaming, turning that into a textural component of like a 90s alt-rock song. Like they want to simultaneously be like, you know, they want to be like all your big black metal forebears while also being like Slow Dive or the Smashing Pumpkins. They want to make these big anthems, and into some sense they achieved that on the first go, because Dream House is a song that literally everyone knows. Like even people who don't listen to metal know, like, I'm dying. How is it? You know, is it like a dream?
Yeah, it's
like
blissful.
People know that shit without even knowing the song. They have made their anthem already, and like each album is them increasingly stepping out into like, okay, can we do this territory of like, can we push this further out? Like, you know, you say New Bermuda doesn't have interludes, but like it has some of the most objective, like, oh, they're trying to push out into like this kind of like alt-rocky territory of like, there's like several minutes on Comeback that are just like nice acoustic strumming and like barely any vocals, and it's just like, this sounds like what an alt-rock album would do at this point in the track listing. And then you come to what I think, like, Ordinary Corrupt Human Love is a stepping stone to this album. However, I think it is my favorite because it's the one that finds the balance between these two polarities of Deafheaven, of like finding them at both of their ends of like, we can do the big screamy moments, like the big metal moments with the blast beats, and then also being like, well, yes, we can do that, but we can also do these big anthemic like 90s alt-rock song styles. Like You Without End is literally just them making like
Yeah.
song that just happens to have black metal vocals.
That's one of their
in it
best
that is-
songs ever.
It is their best one.
It's up there. Their
That-
best song is the
Dream. It's either Dreamhouse or You Without End, but like it's so.
to me it's the
ridiculous.
combination of Honeycomb into Canary Yellow, but that's just sort of like, you know,
Honeycomb, You Without End, Honeycomb, Canary Yellow is one of the most ridiculous
no,
opening runs.
you know,
on
no
any
band will
record
ever
ever.
make an opening stretch as good as that. That's just
Yeah.
that's undeniably good. Like,
That, like,
and this is
You
this
Without
is
End
coming
is
from
them
the
just,
band
like,
who made
slapping
Dreamhouse.
their hand down on the table
Yeah.
and going like, "Look at this, buddy. Look at these cards we've got." Like,
Deafheaven
this is
already
what we're
made the
playing with.
best
And then
way to
Honeycomb
open
is
an
them
album.
going like, and here is how we will arrange this intricately into like these multi-part epics. And like it's just so brilliantly structured, you know, and like even the interludes on the album are showing you like, oh, we can sing too, you know, like it's them laying down all their bona fides in such a way that it like perfectly comes together until you're like, oh, this is all of Deafheaven in summation at once.
I just wish there were songs after Glint on Ordinary Corrupt Human Love,
They-
because it would
there are,
easily
and
be
they're good.
it would easily be their best album, but unfortunately there are no songs after that.
You severely underrate the joy of Night People and Worthless Animal.
They're good, but
I mean, yeah, Worthless Animal is a little more generic, kind of metal riffing, but like, goddamn, those riffs are good. I just love a good riff. I love good guitars.
I also like good guitars, but I think the difference is
And
that
that is why
my
Ordinary Corrupt Human Love is A, the best Deafheaven album, and B, it is like the step towards them finally making the record they wanted to make, which is just like an old school shoegaze record, which they do here.
And guess what? They're really damn good at it. That's the thing, is that they
don't make a bad album.
I really like.
It's not a bad album. I like it. I just think
Yeah.
the biggest problem with this is those vocals. Like, there's one moment on this record where I'm like, you know, George is really pulling in the personality here, and it's on In Blur when he's going like, imagine you laughing.
yeah, good fucking howl.
Like that little lick in his vocals. I'm just like, why is there not more of that? Like, why are you just like going into the background? You could easily do more like moments of really standing yourself out in a way. And I recognize that some of you disagree with that. But
I will agree though that no, I think the vocals on this record are good. I think you're right that what I was talking about, how it sounds like shades of a whole bunch of different stuff. I think there is a little bit of him like finding his footing as a non-screaming vocalist, and him figuring out like,
if they keep at it, they'll get it by LP6.
what's the mode I should be operating in on these songs. But I actually do kind of like how his tone just sort of blends into the guitar tones, because I don't know, I just really like shoegaze songs specifically that are just like all about just like everything dissolving into that fuzz. And I get that like the there was an appeal to the sort of contrast that the screams had with the prettiness of like I as someone even at the back in the time, like you were saying, like even when I wasn't a metalhead, like I liked the song Dreamhouse. Like that was the one thing I was like, okay, I get this band because I understand the appeal of this one song. And I think that there are noisier moments of this record, even though they're not smacking the metal guitars button, like the kind of fuzzier, heavier shoegazy moments, and having his vocals just kind of like melt into that is just like, it's very, it hits it hits buttons in my brain that is like the same as when you like scratch a cat in the right place behind its ear. It's just, there's nothing critical about it. It literally just makes my ears happy. Like, and that's how I feel about this album. Like, it's just exactly what my ears would like to hear.
And I think it's just part of my anti-shoegaze bias. Like, I don't buy into shoegaze unless it's like specifically playing to my kind of taste outside of shoegaze.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's one of my recommendations at the end of this is a shoegaze record, and it is like doing something that I don't think 90% of shoegaze albums would do. But I will get into that later.
We will. All right.
Does anyone else have any closing thoughts other than, you know, In Blur, great single? I just wanted to get that off.
It's a good album, folks. They haven't missed yet. They're a band that only makes masterpieces, and this is their latest masterpiece.
It's pretty solid. They haven't made a bad one yet. That's all I can say.
They haven't
made a
like this is
they haven't made a bad
this
one.
is my least favorite modern Deafheaven album, and even then, it's my third favorite album of the year so far.
They're pretty good.
All right, let's.
Okay, so I think we need to get to ones that are not like it's just a couple of us talking, but like it'll be real quick compared to the others. Like, these are
Exactly.
just ones that we
We've
haven't
gone
covered.
through all the big whales, and now we can get to less discoursey stuff that we're just kind of more excited about.
And thus it is time for the first one, which I think you can take over the majority
Sure.
of.
The first two are going to be two big Jackie ones, but I will just kind of set them up because I think one of these is one that I have written about, and one of these is something I will write about. So first up, I would like to shout out the new Midwife album. This is not our kind of shout out corner. This is good as hell.
Pretty solid.
Oh my
I like
god,
it better than the last one.
I like this album a lot. I think that I don't know how I feel about it yet in terms of how it stacks up with her other two, because I really, really like Forever, and I really, really, really like Author Like Daughter, and I think that this record cleans things up just the tiniest bit without really cleaning it up. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's still a Midwife album. Like you can still barely hear what her vocals are because they're so distorted and tinny, but in a good way. I really love this record. I think that the song 2020, which I got absolutely owned on Twitter because I said it sounds like a Linkin Park song, and then people pointed out to me that it's actually a cover of an Offspring song, which I didn't know. I didn't know that it was an Offspring song, but if you listen to the song and empathize with my situation not knowing the Offspring, it does sound a lot like a Linkin Park song because Linkin Park themselves are influenced by the Offspring. But anyways, that aside, I think this record is really, really, really good. I think Promise Ring is like one of the best 10 songs of the year. I think the end of Promise Ring where the guitar button gets smashed is absolutely fucking just cathartic is the best word to describe it. It is so, I think what she does is so special and is so, as I've said basically since the moment I listened to Forever, it's like I can't believe that no one else had the genius idea of what if grouper but shoegaze. And I think we just need to every day salute Midwife for her service, and we need to shout out to the Flenser, which is a really great record label that is put out this year. Really, the Flenser and I'm blanking on what's the other label, Sargent House. Yeah, Flenser and Sargent House have really
talked about two Sargent House records.
Yeah, is the new grouper is the new grouper not on Flesner? Am I missing that?
No, they're on Cranky.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, folks, there's a new grouper album coming. It's the album of the year.
That's gonna have me and AJ both honking like a goose. But yeah, this Midwife album rocks. If you like shoegaze, but if you like it more on this kind of ambient side of things and slower and a little sadder. I mean, this album is not as like Forever is an album that's like a lump in your throat album because that album is like about grief, and it is just like it might be her best album, but it's also like impossible to sit through most of the time. And so I think this record strikes a good balance of it's a little more polished in the way that Forever was compared to her debut album, but it's also got a little bit less like brutal to sit through. I think Luminol is the name of the new album. It's really great. I definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't. And then this other record, which I will just...
This is one we all agree on. Like,
I'll let you guys share your thoughts because I literally wrote like 2,000 words on this record. But the next record we're going to talk about is the new album from Corliss, which is called Agore. And this is the long-awaited debut record of a British electronic producer, goes by Corliss, who has a very, very, very unique style and sound that is very hard to put into words because there's like basically only one other producer who sounds remotely like what he's doing, because it's basically drumless techno music. Like his whole concept is like, it's not quite ambient music because this is not music that is like formless and fading into the background. Like these songs have like hooks to them. They're sticky. They're forward moving. There are just no drums. There's no rhythm. There's no bass line. There's nothing. So you're floating through the air, but like it's very experimental ambient. There's kind of some classical influences. The album, it sounds most like, just to make a reference point is R+7 by One Oh Tricks Point Never, I would say. But even then, like
I see this more of like Age of.
There's definitely
Black Rainbow is an Age of song, but the rest of this is so spacey. As someone who listened to this for like the first time this morning,
White Picket Fence is very R+7 specifically, but I think
Black Rainbow is like a fucking oh my god, what's it called? Garden of Delete track. That's the one that's just like sticky drama all over again.
It's like a Coreless album is basically like an entire this album is like an entire album inspired by Zebra by One Oh Tricks Point Never is sort of what it feels like. Those kind of stick the way the arpeggiating synths kind of keep this forward momentum going, even though there's no like actual energy in the track. Like it's just this kind of floating thing.
And I'll say that
wild.
Danny should be hanging out with up and coming ambient musicians more than he's hanging out with hosts of the Red Scare podcast. So we love to see this influence.
we do, but also we love Danny's infiltration of Hollywood, because here's the thing. Kanye posted an R+7 thing last night. We need to let OPN infiltrate the sickos because we need to make sure that he can make all the songs good, because he has rescued The Weeknd from his curse of not making the songs good and has started really helping in that department. And I think he could work the same magic for Kanye is all I'm saying. But anyways,
absolutely not. That's a loss.
Yeah, no, that'll be a train wreck, but it's a train wreck that I would like to hear. Anyways, Coreless is really, really fucking great. I wrote an entire feature about this album for Merry-Go-Round magazine. You should go over to my Twitter page, check that out, or you could just look up Merry-Go-Round magazine on Google. You'll probably find it in the music section. I have another piece coming there later this week, which you'll probably we'll talk about it when we get to that album. But anyways, Coreless, great album. Agor, you should check it out. It's the long-awaited debut of this guy whose singles have been much buzzed about in the kind of bleep world forever, and he's someone that has a lot of respect from some other artists I really like Jock Green, who's collaborated with him a bunch of times, and some other heavy hitters. Yeah, really, really great stuff. Definitely recommend it. Anyways, we want to talk about this next record. Rose, you can intro this one.
So next up, big buzzy record, Faye Webster's I Know I'm Funny, haha. This one is like, she's a nice, like, alt country kind of adjacent songwriter, just very pleasant music, but this one's just like, it's nice. Like, that's the best thing I can say about it. It doesn't really stand out that much.
Has been,
except for Cheers, which is like a great single.
No offense to our dearly beloved Max. I have had the same difficulty with taking the Faye Webster pill, where it is like, she is objectively a great singer. She's objectively a good songwriter too. And objectively, every time I put on a Faye Webster album or single, I'm like, this is absurdly pleasant. This is just relaxing and nice. And I've kind of had trouble extracting anything beyond just like, this is nice to put on. But I do think this record, I think the songwriting is good. And I think it goes in some like interesting directions, and there's definitely some moments where like I think the songwriting is clever, and I think that she does. I also appreciate that this album cover does not feature her eating poop chocolate. I really like that change of pace, but besides that, I don't know. I have a hard time enjoying her as something more than just like, oh, this would be really good in a playlist of like stuff to put on when you're like hanging out with people and you want something that's kind of nice to have on in the background.
Ever since I've heard Kingston, I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to hear what Faye Webster does next, and I've still been waiting to hear a song better than Kingston. So.
Yeah, that's fair.
Cheers is that song. I think Cheers is a really good song.
I like Cheers a lot.
Just like the rest of the album is very content to kind of just sit back and like hit you with like to wash over you. With, like,
I love In a Good Way off of this album, but again,
that one's great too. Like
just like Atlanta Millionaires Club, like I listen to these albums and there's one song that I really like, but I have yet to feel compelled by a Faye Webster album. I think she's great, but.
I think she's got talent, but she just has yet to really like put it into an album format.
Yeah. Big time, yeah.
All right, I think that's all we kind of have to say about that one. I don't have much.
I don't really
yeah,
have much to
I was gonna say
like,
I don't.
Dark Side Spiral. They've done it again.
Here's what I will say about this record. This is my only take I have on it. There are lots of people that gave this record a very lukewarm review, and they're like, they just did Psychic again. Yes, this record is. I will concede that this is probably the least innovative Nicholas Jar album to come along in a really long time, just because.
and that's the problem is like we're coming off of like a hot streak.
Oh yeah,
Jar.
just an
like,
absolutely unreal streak of constantly outdoing himself and pushing the envelope. And this record is just another Dark Side record, which I say to then circle back and say, hey, what the hell is wrong with just another Dark Side record? Yes, this album is Psychic too. You know what's great? Psychic. You know what we needed another one of? Psychic. I'm happy to have another Dark Side album in my life. I think there are a couple of moments on this album where it goes in some interesting directions. Like I like some of the folkier instrumentation that kind of pops up here and there on this record, and I think that it's not so derivative that I don't think it's worth checking out, but it's definitely not game changing in the way that Dark Side completely like melted people's brains and were like, oh my god, this is the next, Nicholas Jar is the next coming of the great electronic musicians of his era. And I think that having now shown us that he can do so much more than like a great chill out psychedelic electronic album, we now expect so much out of Nico, and I think that's why this record got kind of lackluster reviews. But I think it's good. You should check it out if you like the first one. If you haven't listened to Psychic, go listen to Psychic and then check out Spiral after you're done.
I think the singles are pretty great. I don't know how I feel about the deep cuts though.
Yep, that's kind of where I'm at too.
Okay, so next we have our personal soapbox. So I'm going to put on a timer for each of us.
Okay, do it.
And you can go off for as long as you want about like each of these. Like
as long as you want.
basically
I
just-
was promised 2 minutes.
3 minutes. I will bump it up to 3 minutes, so one for each.
Okay, that's fair.
So let me pull up the timer.
I only have one thing to talk about, so I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead, AJ. Just 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay, start.
Okay, a week ago from tonight, from recording, I saw the Dead and Company on tour, their first show of their fall tour in Raleigh, North Carolina. And what do you know it? The Grateful Dead are an incredibly good band. I, much like Gavin, who some listeners of this podcast may be familiar with, got very jam band pilled over the past year, but I haven't been fully fish brained yet. I'm more of a Deadhead, and I got very into the Grateful Dead over the past year, and then seeing the Dead & Co. tour was just incredible, and I've already bought every show they've played since that one a week ago on FLAC audio to listen to on my computer. I'm a big-time Deadhead now. I'm a couch groupie. They're just so good. John Mayer is so good at playing the guitar. Bob Weir and Jeff Chimenti are incredible at the instrumentals that they do. If you have an opportunity to go to a Dead & Company show later this year, or even just stream one of them from your couch at home, you should do it, because they'll remind you how good it is to see live music with other people. I waited for the show out in like 2.5 hours in the rain. It was delayed. Friend of the pod, Jack Tiggs, saved me a seat on the lawn, and there were insurmountable odds for me to enjoy this Dead & Company show on a Monday night at like 9:30, an hour and a half starting late, for me just being soaking wet and miserable. There was no way I was going to enjoy it, and it turned out to be one of the best shows I've ever seen in my entire life, because they're that good. So they're great. They're very good. You should go see them or listen to them. Dead & Company.
Yeah.
Dudes rock. Old men rock. I've taken the dad pill.
The mayor pill.
I've taken the mayor pill.
You want to go next, or should I? Should I go?
I'll go next. I can get these out pretty quickly.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, first, I'm just going to shout out the Joy Orbison mixtape real quick, because I'm writing about it for this Merry-Go-Round magazine this week. Check out my Twitter. I'm going to have an article on it soon. Joy Orbison Never Lost. All right, the two things I want to talk about are the King Woman record, which is called Celestial Blues, which is basically this really, really, really nice mix of shoegaze and metal, kind of like we were talking about earlier, but this is more in the Chelsea Wolfe school of things. Like, this record sounds so much like Hisspun in a lot of really good ways. If you liked the album Hisspun, I definitely recommend checking out King Woman. It fucking rips. Great riffs. And then the other thing I want to shout out is the new Alexis Marshall solo album, which is fucking demented. Oh my god, this guy needs to take a nap or something. Alexis Marshall is just having a bad time, and he made a Scott Walker type album about it, which is basically Daughters minus all of the guitars. It is so nasty and grody, and just there's a really great song where he talks about don't go outside, don't touch anything. It's the quarantine anthem of the year.
Don't do no yoga, don't do Pilates.
No violent crimes talk, none. Anyways, Alexis Marshall is
I didn't even realize what you were doing.
Alexis Marshall is great. Daughters is a great band. He's the great frontman of that band. You should check out his solo record. It's weird and not for the faint of heart, but it's genuinely one of the most unique things I've heard this year.
Okay, good. So I will go off now about my picks. So first up, Big Brave Vital. This is probably not from this quarter, but I just recently discovered this. This is so good. It's like slow, chunky guitars, a lot of screaming. Like, it's my bag, essentially. It's just good, slow guitar music, which I like. Just fat riffs. Laura Stevenson, self-titled, and then also Telethon, Swim Out Past the Breakers. They're both just perennially good artists who I think you should check out. Laura Stevenson, good singer-songwriter. Telethon, power pop punk, just the usual. And finally, this is the one I wanted to go off about a little bit, is Wednesday Twin Plagues. They are a shoegaze indie rock band out of Asheville, North Carolina. Oh my god, they have some good riffs. In particular, Handsome Man, I think, is one of the best singles I've heard all year. So they basically just find the in-between point of shoegaze and country, which is just so wild. It's incredibly good. Highly, highly recommend.
I checked out Twin Plagues today. It's really fucking good. I'm always up. If you put, as you learned in this episode, if you put shoegaze in the description of an album, I will check it out. I will give it a spin in the same way that I will listen to any British person who picks up a guitar. I will listen to anyone who buys a distortion pedal and makes a little shoegazy thing. And I agree. This is not just your run of the mill shoegaze record. It influences some really cool. It takes in some really cool influences. Handsome Man is a really great single. I also
sounds like that song sounds particularly like Pavement too.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in the soup of influences that is Wednesday. And I also want to shout out one of my favorite track titles of the year is The Burned Down Dairy Queen. I just think that's a great song and a great song title. Anyways, check out Twin Plagues by Wednesday. It's a good album.
Good album.
All right, I think that covers it. That's
do
all.
we want to have any last words on anything? I just realized at the start of this we talked about an album that we never finished.
Oh yeah, right.
We should talk about Lord's Solar Power.
It's
almost 11 p.m.
Singles like Stoned at the Nail Salon with backing vocals from Phoebe Bridgers and Carol.
And I really just while we're here, one serious point about the Lord album. I wanted to like this album not only because I am a fan of the musical artist Lord, but I like weed. I am from California, and the thing that makes me most upset about this album more than anything else is it makes smoking weed in California sound boring. And I want to clarify for any of the listeners, the song Propaganda by Lord is anti-California propaganda, and it is peak transplant shit of goes to LA exactly one time and then is I should make an album that sounds like Freedom 90, and you fucked up, Lord. You fucked up big time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna make a song about leaving LA, just make "Leaving LA" by Father John Misty.
All of the Lord album did for me is made me realize exactly how much Norman fucking Rockwell by Lana Del Rey is a classic, because it's not like Lana Del Rey is a more insightful, mature, wizened person than Lord. She just remembered to make the songs good, and Lord forgot.
I haven't listened to the song yet, but I just want to say I've seen the cover art. Casey Musgraves, ma'am.
Oh my
direct
God!
message
AJ,
me.
AJ,
you shouldn't be alone right now. I can fix you.
Before we leave,
Maddie, we need you.
Get my line. I can save you.
I was about to say, AJ, right now, I need this from you. Before we end this episode, we need to listen to the new Casey single, because I want to get your reaction live on the pod, because it is fucking baffling. Not in a bad way, just I can't believe she's done this. Seriously, put it on right now.
I've pulled it up. Casey Musgraves could make The Big Day 2, and I would just allow her to stomp on my throat.
100%. No, I have not decided.
Maddie
I don't even.
I told Maddie we were about to wrap. I texted Maddie saying we were about to wrap.
We are.
And Maddie just started walking away as soon as AJ.
The thing is, me and Wilford Thrill are the biggest Casey Musgraves heads because Will and I were on the fucking wave in 2015 with pageant material. It was only me and Wilford Thrill standing Casey.
I appreciate you in solidarity, but that's what makes this single so fucking baffling. It's weird because it's clearly the intro to the album. Like it's this slow build.
I've hit the Spanish guitar.
There's so much fucking going on with it. It sounds like
this is what our patrons.
It sounds like
to listen to AJ talk about a song that they can't.
It sounds like It sounds like After Hours by The Weeknd. Why does it sound like After Hours by The Weeknd? Why is she doing this?
The thing is just the cover art, ma'am. You shouldn't be crying. I can solve all of your problems.
Anyways, thank you for listening to the Indieheads podcast. Thank you for listening to us being on our bullshit. Thank you to Maddie for recording this episode, even though he was not on it and is.
And thank you to whoever edits this. I don't know who it'll be, but we'll find someone. And thank you for listening to all 2 hours.
So
of
the
this
song is
in the middle of
the song is half over, and the 808s have just kicked in.
It's the intro
where's this
to
going?
the album.
Yeah.
You're still listening.
It is not a complete statement as a song, even though it tries like 18 different things in a 3-minute runtime, and it is just like one of.
Wow! Yeah, she hit the fucking weekend like. She hit the In the Hills vocals.
Seriously,
like the echo, yeah.
It is not one of the worst singles of the year. It is just the most baffling lead single for an album I have heard.
Well, the worst single of the year is obviously Solar Power. One of the worst.
Well, I was gonna say stuff.
Sleepy. We're all going bear mode. We started this episode going Billy mode, but now we're going bear mode.
So all of us right now, our Zoom
us
backgrounds
have
are
to
images of sleeping bears. Very important content.
Well, I guess while we're still here, we might as well talk about the Donda tour. Huh?
No.
Under
I saw an
under
image
no
earlier, like,
circumstances.
he's apparently building a house in the middle of a stadium. I'm losing my mind.
In God's image, call that a selfie.
I can't
What is
believe-
this song? This song is so. Oh my God!
I told you.
She just hit the fucking.
Okay, we gotta end this. We can't
Jackie,
keep
you're
going
wrong.
on.
This doesn't sound like The Weeknd intro. This sounds like the intro to a post 2010 Muse album.
Oh my God, that's what it is. Holy shit!
Oh.
It sounds like fucking. It sounds like fucking. What's Jared Leto's band?
It sounds like
30 Seconds to Mars.
It
It
sounds like-
sounds like.
Casey Musgraves.
All right, we need to end this episode.
I
now.
want to
Pull
end the
plug.
episode,
Pull
but
the
Maddie
plug.
has not returned from the
Pull the
wilderness.
plug. Okay, we'll probably just cut this out at some point. Thank you for listening. We're gonna cut this off at some point, even though the recording is stopped.
What an awful single. How do you think someone will listen to that and
Bye.
be excited for your